that the big surprise could come, that spacecrafts could come in by the thousands.
You're scrolling late at night, and you find a website that looks like it hasn't been touched since the 90s. Neon text, clunky layout, a few grainy photos, and a message from people who aren't alive anymore. Not because they stopped posting, but because they stopped living. This is the Heaven's Gate website, and it's still online. Over 2 decades after 39 people, all dressed the same, lying in bunk beds, chose to die together. They believed a spaceship was coming, that Earth was about to be recycled, and that Marshall Applewhite, a self-proclaimed prophet, was their only hope. But this wasn't chaos. This was coordinated. Some even castrated themselves to prepare. They weren't lost. They thought they were going home. Because here's the terrifying part. Most didn't start out believing. They started out lonely, vulnerable, just looking for purpose. So before you dismiss them, ask yourself, how far would you go just to feel like you belong?
Do exactly as I say, you will not know death.
You never expect a cult to start in a hospital room, but that's where this one began. Houston, Texas, 1972. Marshall Applewhite, music professor, fired, divorced, drifting between hospital stays and hallucinations. Then he met Bonnie Nettles, a nurse with 4 kids, and a fixation on astrology and end times. She didn't just listen. She said their meeting had been destined, not by God, but by beings from another world. For Applewhite, it was electric. Finally, someone who didn't just see him, but believed in him. They talked for hours, then days, then left their old lives behind. They called themselves the Two, and to the world, they looked eccentric, but harmless. But what they preached, that Earth was about to be recycled, that a spaceship was coming, that they were the UFO 2 from the Book of Revelation, and only a chosen few could ascend, and people listened, not because of the theology, but because of the attention, the warmth, the validation. Former members would later describe that phase as love bombing, a tactic where you're flooded with warmth, validation, and purpose. Not facts, not fear, just the feeling that you finally matter. In 1974, their first follower joined. She left after a month, but others stayed. And maybe now, you can see why. Maybe you show up to a meeting. A flyer caught your eye. Something about higher consciousness, cosmic evolution. You don't know what to expect. But when you walk in, no one pressures you. They just smile, ask about your life, your pain. They listen like they actually care. Someone puts a hand on your shoulder and says, "You're not crazy. You're just not from here." And something in you softens. Because for the first time in a long time, you feel like you belong. You come back the next day, then the next. Before you realize it, you're not just attending, you're believing. By September 1975, they held a gathering in Waldport, Oregon, and something surreal happened. 20 people, middle class, educated, disappeared, sold their possessions, gave away their pets, walked away from everything. The press went wild. Walter Cronkite broke the story on national TV. No one knew what to call it. A cult? a spiritual awakening. Whatever it was real, and it was only the beginning. Because from here, they stopped recruiting and started reshaping identities. In 1985, Bonnie Nettles died. The one who said they'd ascend together without death was gone. She died of liver cancer in a Texas hospital bed, quietly, humanly. And in that moment, everything they believed should have unraveled. She was Ty, the divine guide, the voice from the next level. But Applewhite didn't fall apart. He doubled down. He told them Bonnie hadn't really died, just left her vehicle, that physical death was the doorway to transcendence. That idea became law, and with it Heaven's Gate entered a new phase, quieter, more isolated, but more devoted than ever. From the outside, it looked bizarre. From the inside, it felt like purpose. Members were discouraged from showing emotion, from speaking without permission, from touching one another. Sex was low vibrational. Celibacy was purity. And eventually, 7 men, including Applewhite himself, underwent voluntary castration. Why would anyone agree to that? Because by then, they weren't themselves anymore. Their identities had been systematically stripped away, their thoughts reshaped, their doubts framed as weakness. Experts call it bounded choice. You think you're choosing, but every other door has been sealed shut. You're not free. You're just following the only path you're allowed to see. And Applewhite, he knew how to make them stay. He mixed adoration with control, warmth with silence, a smile, followed by withdrawal. It kept members anxious, eager to please, terrified to leave. They weren't suicidal. They were preparing for departure. And in the early 1990s, as the rest of the world was just figuring out dial-up, Heaven's Gate saw something else, an opportunity. They launched a web design business called Higher Source. The same group that once preached in church basements was now building websites for real clients. And with that, they didn't just stay hidden. They became self-sufficient. No need for public donations. No need to interact with outsiders. They could fund their mission quietly, invisibly. The internet gave them more than money. It gave them insulation. It became a digital wall between them and the outside world. By day, they coded in silence. By night, they rehearsed for oblivion. No alarms, no interference, just quiet belief, growing louder in their minds. No one was watching. No one thought to look. And all the while, Applewhite was growing more convinced. A sign was coming. Something they couldn't miss. The Hale-Bopp comet was discovered in 1995. To most people, it was a celestial spectacle. A once-in-a-lifetime view of a bright tail streaking across the sky. But to Applewhite, it was the signal they'd been waiting for. He became convinced, or maybe just needed to believe, that a spaceship was hiding behind it. In October 1996, they rented a mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. 9,000 square feet, $7,000 a month, paid in full. The owner was told a group of Christian-based angels would be living there. Inside, the preparations began. They filmed farewell messages, final teachings. They even bought alien abduction insurance, $1 million per member covering 50 people, just in case. But this was no drill. They were getting ready. And the last thing Marshall Applewhite ever said on camera was that it was time to evacuate this Earth. March 1997, Rancho Santa Fe, California. Inside a quiet mansion, 39 people are living like clockwork. Morning chores, web design projects, group meals. On the surface, they look like a team of quiet tech entrepreneurs. But this is something else entirely. Because they know this is it. The Hale-Bopp comet is streaking across the sky. And they believe it's hiding a spaceship, just for them. They've rehearsed every detail. They call it their final exit. They don't call it death. They call it graduation. Farewell videos are filmed, not in grief, but joy. One member smiles, "I'm the happiest person in the world right now." Another calls it the most exciting decision of their life. Hours later, those same faces lay motionless in bunk beds, not screaming, not crying, just gone. It wasn't chaos, it was ritual. Each step practiced and precise. Not everyone was sure. One member reportedly hesitated, afraid this might be wrong. But Applewhite reminded them, this world was never yours to begin with. And just like that, the doubt passed. The first group takes phenobarbital mixed with vodka, lays down on bunk beds, dressed in matching black shirt sweatpants and brand new Nike Decades, a $5 bill and 3/4 in every pocket, a symbolic fare for the ride. A plastic bag is secured over each head. Once unconscious, another member removes it, adjusts their body, covers their face with a purple shroud. Then the next group, and the next. No panic, no screaming, just peace. Because for them, this wasn't a tragedy, it was transcendence. They had lived for years inside a total system of belief, where doubt was weakness, where leaving meant eternal failure, where the only future that made sense was the one Applewhite promised. On March 22nd and 23rd, they followed through. And on March 24th, Applewhite himself, Doe, lay down, closed his eyes, and waited. He was the last link to tie. And now, he believed, it was his turn to rejoin her. By March 26th, it was over. 39 bodies, neatly arranged, identical. Still, the only survivor, a former member named Rio, received a final package. A videotape, a letter, coordinates. He drove to the house, walked through the side door, and found them. Room after room. Quiet. Still. He didn't say, they're dead. He said, they've left. When the news broke, it didn't feel real. 39 people, dead by choice, wearing matching Nikes, waiting for a spaceship. The world didn't mourn, it laughed. Jay Leno joked about Nike ads. Late night hosts rolled punchlines. The sneakers sold out. Not in tribute, but in morbid curiosity. No one wanted to sit with the real question. Why did this happen? Instead, America did what it always does when things get too strange to process. It laughed, then it buried it. Literally. The Rancho Santa Fe mansion sat empty for 2 years. Then it was bulldozed, the address changed, the street renamed. Colina Norte became Paseo Victoria, not just erasing a building, but the memory. And yet, Heaven's Gate never really disappeared. The website? Still live. Same fonts, same layout, maintained by 2 former members, Mark and Sarah King. They still respond to emails. Some are curious, some are grieving, some are looking for meaning, others want to join. Because even now, after the headlines, the documentaries, the body count, the message still speaks to someone. At least 3 copycat suicides followed. Former members who believed they'd been left behind, that they missed their ride. The families got ashes, government-issued boxes. Sometimes, nothing. One father received a plain cardboard box. No note, no name, just a case number on a printed label. There were no goodbyes, just videos and empty beds. Not everyone made it to the end. Some walked away, barely. Amanda Johnson joined at 19. stayed for 17 years. She left when talk of transition began to mean death. She later said, "I loved them. I still dream about them. And I still wonder if I would have followed if I'd stayed just a little longer." Frank Lyford, another former member, put it bluntly, "Being in Heaven's Gate was giving my power away on all levels." And even now, years later, some survivors still feel torn between grief and guilt. Because leaving didn't just mean walking away from a belief. It meant walking away from the only people who ever made them feel like they belonged. It wasn't about aliens. It wasn't even about death. It was about love, about finding your people, even if it meant losing yourself. And that's the real tragedy. That manipulation doesn't have to look like force. It can look like comfort, like community, like the only place you've ever truly felt seen. Heaven's Gate didn't start with poison. It started with a hug and ended with silence. When people hear Heaven's Gate, they think of bunk beds, the shoes, the shrouds, and they ask the wrong question. How could anyone believe that? The real question is, how far would you go to feel like you belong? Because cults don't start with poison. They start with loneliness, with a late night conversation, a moment of vulnerability, a soft voice saying, "You matter." Marshall Applewhite didn't enslave his followers. He embraced them. He told them their pain made sense, that they were special, that this broken world was never meant for them anyway, and for people who had felt invisible their whole lives. That kind of love. It was magnetic. Over time, Heaven's Gate became more than a belief. It became a total world. One where every thought, feeling, and decision was shaped to serve one idea: that Earth was a mistake. And only Applewhite had the map to salvation. Experts call it bounded choice, when every option but one has been slowly taken from you. You don't even notice it happening at first. It feels like a hallway. You walk through one door, then another. Each time, you're told it's progress. But behind you, the doors begin to disappear. Quietly. Without ceremony. One day you turn around, and there's only one door left. And it feels like you chose it. But really, it's the only one still open. That's what makes it so insidious. You don't feel trapped. You feel loyal, grateful, certain. So no, this wasn't just a story about aliens, or even about faith. This was a story about belonging, about what people will sacrifice, even their lives, just to feel chosen. And that's what makes this so chilling. Because the next Heaven's Gate, it won't start with a spaceship. It'll start with someone saying, "You're one of us, and if you've ever felt alone, that might be all it takes." If this story made you feel something, ask yourself, what would I need to hear to believe the unbelievable? Because that's where it always starts. Not with aliens, but with a whisper of belonging. Share this video if you think these stories matter. Not because they're bizarre, but because they're warnings. If we don't understand how this happens, we'll never see the next one coming. And if you've ever felt alone in this world, you're not broken, you're just human. Subscribe for more deep dives like this one, where we look past the headlines and into the human heart. In the comments, tell me, what still haunts you about Heaven's Gate? I'll be reading, because maybe you don't need a spaceship to believe the unbelievable, you just need to be seen.